Hey everybody, what is up? Wavejump here and welcome back to another video. Today, I have a quick little video on something new to 1.13. I don't know if this will remain in it or not, but it's called the Debug Stick. Now, I'd seen a little about this on the internet, and I was curious as to what the heck it was. So I went ahead and I played around with it a bit, and it's actually a very, very cool little item. Now, this is a creative mode only kind of item. I mean, not necessarily creative mode only, but it's similar to the command block. You'd only get it via the give command. And it's actually very, very cool and very, very powerful because you could do a lot of custom block state things with it. So actually I wonder if this works on doors. Let's go ahead and try that out. Not doors, door. Well, okay, yeah, we can't do that. So let me go ahead and put one right over here. So maybe I'll do that later. So what the debug stick does is it lets you go ahead and change the kind of block states of items. So in order to get it, first off, you just do give @p debug stick, like so, and you will get yourself a debug stick. Literally just looks like an enchanted stick, but it could do plenty of different stuff. So first off, let's start with this grass here. So if I just go ahead and right click on it, it'll go ahead and make it a snowy grass. If I click again, it turns it back to normal. If I go ahead and attack it, or left click, it goes ahead and it'll tell me at the bottom there that selected snowy, which false. If I click, it says selected snowy true because now the snowy mode is on. Now grass is interesting in that it only has two states. It only has snowy, or actually it only really has one state, snowy, which can be set to true or false. However, some of these other little things here have their own different little states, and you could see why this debug stick can become powerful. Now, I should also mention, I can't remember how it was done, but there's some pretty interesting stuff you could do with this. I saw a video by Phoenix SC where he was able to go ahead and make fence posts invisible to players and in something that players could walk through, but mobs couldn't. Long story short, and that would be using this debug stick item. So if I, for example, to go ahead and find the store here. By the way, sorry it's a shorter video this week. There is a reason behind that, which I might get to later. You notice there's a bunch of different little things. If I go ahead and left click, it'll cycle through these different block states. Facing, half, hinge, and open. Oh, and powered. So first off, let's go ahead and say powered. And actually, I'm wondering if we were to go ahead here and grab a repeater out of it, if the powered state would go ahead and do anything. Just kind of messing around, seeing what works and what doesn't, because that's kind of partially what this is all about. If we go ahead and do this here, let's go ahead and find the powered state. So I'm just going to left click until powered shows up on the bottom here. I'm just going to click. I do have to shift click, it looks like. And powered is now set to true. But interestingly, it's not doing anything. And my question would then be, if I were, for example, to grab a redstone block. Interesting. So it looks like the powered state actually just doesn't really even do much of anything at all, which is kind of odd. At least if you try to change it manually. There's the open state, of course, which interestingly, it looks like you could change both halves of the door individually, which is pretty fascinating. So one thing you should know, by the way, is that if you're going ahead and, say, trying to interact with the door, it's going to open and close no matter what if you just click on it. So you want to hold shift to go ahead and get this fine-tuned control. And it'll go ahead and actually cycle in the reverse order that it usually would cycle in. Let's see, there's this facing thing. So for example, there we go. This is the northwards facing section. I could select facing south. I believe somehow, maybe, I don't know. Nope, apparently not. Anyways, you could change where it's facing. Point is, let's see, facing. So I go ahead and set that to west there, and set it to south, and there you go. Now you notice the hinge is in a different location. There's also, it looks like a little half one, and this says half lower. Oh, that's really interesting. So you go ahead and toggle the halves of the door. So you could have two like half doors. Oh, that's off. Okay. There's, of course, the open state, which that one's a very weird one to mess around with because of this whole thing, but it's not completely pointless because you can't change the door halves individually. And yes, that's a pretty cool little thing there, of course. By the way, I'm not sure why it's so laggy, given that, oops, I was running like 1.12 with shaders and stuff earlier, and it was working fine. My computer today, for some reason, is acting slow, so I have to figure out what's going on with that. Anyways, you'll notice with leaves, there's actually a couple of different things. So if I go ahead and left click, there are two things here, check decay and decayable. So for example, let's make sure decayable is on so that it can decay. And let's see, if we go ahead and set check decay to true, maybe that'll cause it to decay. If we go ahead and just set it on a bunch of these guys, I don't know, maybe it'll do something, maybe it won't. You never know, right? It's about trying to figure out what the states are partially. And of course, I could go ahead and try and break this. But one of the interesting things as well is they could go ahead and rotate these wooden logs by changing their axis property. Just like so. You could change both the x and the y axis. Or sorry, no. Sorry, you could just change axis, but the parenthesis is kind of throws you off a bit. There's also a head, and the head one I think is one of the cooler ones because you notice here if I just get rid of this little tree here, just like so. If it'll go away ever, which would be nice, you know, it would be nice if it would do what it's supposed to do. You'll notice there's this little head, and one of the weird things about this is that there's only one state, which is facing. But if you just go ahead and right click, it'll just rotate around. And interestingly, I was messing out with this earlier, there's also another one called rotation. I'm not sure why it's not working there. I think it was because it was attached to another block before. But basically, it's either rotation or it's facing. It's facing, I guess, if it's attached to something, rotation if it's just sitting on the ground. So you could just make a little rotating head that's totally not weird at all. So there's that. So let me set the time to 0. That even works anymore. There we go. You'll notice, here we go. Now we have a shulker box in the furnace. First off, let's take a look at the furnace attributes. So you notice, if I left click, there are two things that show up, and it is facing and lit. So if I go ahead and turn the lit one on, it'll go ahead and make the furnace look like it's smelting something. And I would wonder, for example, then if I were to put the coal in, and I were to put in, I don't know. Actually, let's do 2 logs. So we're making a charcoal. And let's see what happens there. So interestingly, you can see, of course, it stays lit as before. And let's see if it stays lit even after it's done in a little bit. But let's go ahead. And in the meantime, you could take a look at our shulker box here, and you notice that has one attribute, which is facing. But you notice if I go ahead here and shift click, we'll go ahead and just rotate the shulker box around. So you could go ahead and say have an upside down shulker box. And often as it's facing stuff, it could just be nice if it's hard to place in that direction. There you go, I got it. And you'll notice, interestingly, it turned off. So it's kind of something interesting. I could change, of course, how it's facing as well. If I wanted to, I could have it, well, actually, you can't have it face upwards in the first place. But you know, theoretically, if it did have a state where it was facing upwards, you could have it do that. All sorts of very interesting things. And the last thing was fences. So you'll notice you go ahead here, and you could change the states of the fences. For example, I'm just enabling the north attribute or disabling it, just toggling the north attribute on all these. And you notice, got this really weird little arrangement here. Let's go ahead and now switch to the east attribute and go ahead and toggle it on all these. Just seeing what's going on, right? So there you go. Now you notice these are basically all these kind of individual weird looking things. And now we can move on to south, for example, and just toggle it on those. Like so. Very, very weird. Oops. I think we're just on west now. I could be wrong though. And you notice, yeah, it's just this really just odd little thing to mess around with. And you could get these really interesting looking things. You know, it'd be interesting to see, for example, if a zombie could walk through these. I would assume they could, but you never know with how this game is programmed. But anyways, I hope you have enjoyed this video. Sorry it was short this week. One of the things I'm working on is a community spotlight again. So I actually have 1 submission already, and I need 2 more. So please go ahead and submit something. If you haven't seen any community spotlights before, go ahead and just Google Wavejump Games Community Spotlight. Oh, that is terrifying. And I've gone ahead and basically you get your stuff featured. And I will leave credit to yourself and all that. You just need to go ahead and find one of those videos, and I have instructions typically in the description or in a comment as how to submit stuff. Anyways, I hope you have enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching. Bye.